Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, 10 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time, and that means that we are back with another episode of the Canadian Immigration Institute live Q&A. And this is the series of our weekly episodes where we answer your questions related to Canadian immigration. While we're waiting for the people to pile in, we would ask that you send us where you tune in from and perhaps give us a shout out, and we'll give you a shout out, and then we'll proceed with answering your questions. So today it's just Mark and I. And how are you doing, Mark?
Good. I'm a little fuzzy today, so not sure where the connection issue is here, you guys, but that's okay. You can still see my bright smiley face here, and the audio is good, so the video might be a little bit blurry today, but that's all right. The show must go on. Crazy times, Igor. We've got a new act that's coming through, and if I didn't have consults all day today, we would do a live stream on that specific update, and it's going to be pretty major because the Liberal government is just heck bent on getting people out of the country, and they do not want them applying under certain categories. And so they are planning on enacting legislation that will allow them to pick and choose who they want to come and stay, and who they want to leave, and disallow their application. And these are broad sweeping powers.
Yeah. We can take a look at the Strong Borders Act while we're waiting for more people to share their questions. So what we're talking about is this publication, and it pertains to many different acts, not only to the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, but you can see to the Oceans Act, Sex Offender Information Registration Act, Criminal Code, and so on and so on. But what we are interested in is this. So there are 3 paragraphs talking about the IRPA. One of the most concerning part is this, at least for me, Mark. I really freaked out when I saw this sentence in here. So basically, they want to amend the IRPA to strengthen control over immigration documents for the public interests, and then these new authorities, which could be used for matters of public health or national security, would allow Canada to cancel, suspend, or change groups of immigration documents immediately. Well, that's concerning. Pause the acceptance of new applications. Well, that they already can do it, right? Like they just pause the rounds of invitation for express entry, and that's pretty much it.
But we know where this is going, Igor.
Mhm.
Like I don't know how far they would push it, but pausing the acceptance of new applications to, say, H&Cs, we're just not
Mhm.
taking any more H&Cs.
Or
And
refugee
then,
applications.
yep, and you can see for asylum.
Mhm.
Those
And
are
then
all the things. If you watch our Times Up series, you guys, or listen to it, all of the strategies, all of the things that people have been trying to teach you about what to do, how to stay, and even your post-grad work permit extension applications that all of you are filing all the time. There's nothing stopping them from saying, we're just not going to process these anymore. If you're filing an application that we call kind of a frivolous work permit extension just to buy time, then we're just not going to process. And we know that they have to do something, right, you guys? When you have processing times that, in a world where everything is supposed to be expedited, you've got, the PNP processing times of over 20 months. You've got spousal sponsorships that are like 2 years. Work permit application extensions in Canada, 230, whatever, 3 days processing. Like, these are all unhealthy numbers. And the Liberals are not the first party to do this, you guys. They're not the first party to say, hey, we're just going to just cull out all these applications and reject them. They're not. The Conservatives did it back in the mid 2010s. And we had a massive backlog of federal skilled worker applications that had built up over time while the Liberals were in power, and they were upwards of 600, almost 700,000 applicant backlog. And in those days, the government was probably admitting maybe about 100 a year. And so in some countries like China, for instance, the processing times were 6 to 7 years to process. So the Conservatives, when they got elected, say, like, we got to do something about this. And so they just culled out all of the backlog of applications and just said, thanks for applying. we're going to give you a refund, but we no longer are going to accept your application even though you've submitted. And there were court challenges all the time. I remember that the Liberal government, that was one of their big pushes, was how could they do this? That is so cruel to all these poor applicants who are trying to apply. And then lo and behold, we're in a situation once again where the Liberal government has allowed so many people into the country that now there isn't room for them. And they basically, as they've said, they want them to go home. And so in the process of doing this, the strengthening or the Strong Borders Act is, if it goes through, are going to incorporate policies that will allow them to just blanket say, sorry, we've got all these in the queue, we're just refusing them carte blanche.
Yeah. And we're talking specifically about this: pause or cancel the processing of applications already in an inventory. And Mark, this is already happening. One thing I want to do, I want to let's see, I want to share this screenshot that we've received, that we found from one of our Canadian immigration consultants in a web. And this is basically a letter that was sent by Saskatchewan Immigration Nominee Program. And they basically saying that there is a cap, and this cap has been met for 2025, and CIMP is returning all applications affected by this cap. It's basically saying that, okay, we understand, we've accepted your application, we started processing it, but we just no longer can continue with your application. So too bad, so sad, we'll stop processing your application and you're on your own now.
And it's interesting, Igor, because there were court challenges to this type of a thing in the past with the PNP. So when they first waded into this, the provincial nominee programs are really programs of policy. So from one day to the next, they just, the head of the program, through consultation with the stakeholders of the PNPs, can make changes like on the spot. So as of today, we're going to do this. As of tomorrow, we're doing this. And I think of Alberta historically, they used to have two programs. One was an H-1B, sound familiar? An H-1B program where if you're on an H-1B visa, you could come and you could immigrate directly to Alberta, and also a family class one that included siblings and things like that. Well, when those programs were announced, thousands and thousands of applications were submitted and completely flooded the program, to the point that they had to shut the programs down. But they did not have the authority at that stage to just return applications that were submitted. So those applications took up processing in the province because they didn't, they probably had right around the numbers they're with right now, like a little under 5,000. In fact, there may have even been a little bit less. But they received so many applications that it basically just delayed. It absorbed all of the nomination spots just to process through those two programs. And they didn't have an ability to just call them out. Well, after that happened, they tried to, but there was court challenges, and it was found that they couldn't just do that because they didn't advise people that could be a consequence. But now, if you go to any PNP, they all say, "Hey, we reserve the right to return your application, even if you meet the requirements based on the needs of the province." And that's exactly what Saskatchewan's doing here.
Yeah. And even with the Alberta Advantage immigration program, even in the old days, they would say, yes, even if you pay us $500, that's only an expression of interest. We're not under any obligation to process your application. The problem now is that now if they started processing your application, they can say, you know what? Sorry, we cannot longer continue with your file. All right, Mark. So we have 117 people watching already. Some of them are saying hello, so let me just pull up a couple of shout outs. So Boomer Elbow Dude Mr. Burns says,
that's a handle. That's multiple.
Yeah, says good morning to you. We have JB, who says, never thought I will be studying French for permanent residence, but here I am. Merci beaucoup.
There you are.
Great decision. And then Heng says, very late, good evening from Cambodia. I'm wondering, what time is it now there? It's close to midnight, probably.
Probably.
All right, let's see. We have greetings from Coaldale.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and then Nicole has sent the question right away. Nicole, we'll come back to your question just in a little bit. Let's see. We have Noman from Vancouver. We'll come back to the question just in a tiny bit.
Looks like it's about quarter after 11 p.m. in
Yeah,
Cambodia. I think so.
yeah. And then we also have
so
Jimmy
late.
from Ontario. All right. So before we begin, we will pull up the super chats because we'll try to give preference to those people who invest a little of their resources to have their questions pumped up. So the first one is from Nash. So Nash asks, AAP accepts postgrad work permits as job offers, but Express Entry doesn't. Since IRCC reviews if a PNP needed for a job offer, are they mindful of this difference?
Yeah.
Are there any issues? And then the clarification is here. I said no to the Express Entry job offer question, but applied under Express Entry PNP, where the nomination does require a job offer, just a different definition. I assume RCC reviews it.
Yeah. Yeah, Nash, don't worry about that. Like, they operate under different rules. And so what's considered to be a job offer for the purposes of Express Entry, you guys all know what that is. And when it comes to the provinces, they have their own definition of what constitutes a job offer. So yeah, they're aware of that, and I wouldn't be concerned about that.
Yeah. Perfect. And then we also have one more super chat from Amor. Admin assistant in travel tourism. My expression of interest is under Alberta Opportunity Stream, no LMIA, not eligible for THS. Any chance of getting invited under the AOS?
Igor, can you let's shift over and take a look at the Alberta Advantage Immigration Program and the processing, what's going on with processing. So Igor and I did a presentation just recently to the Ukraine community here in Lethbridge last week, I guess it was. And we talked about some of the programs, some of the options, and this is what we're seeing. So Saskatchewan is just, we're returning all your applications. We don't have any spots. Alberta, if we take a look at Alberta and we look at this expression of interest system, they have detailed numbers of how many people have submitted expressions of interest in the various programs and categories. And so you can see, if we go down to the expression of interest section here, Igor's just shifting down, you can see here that the numbers are off the charts. So if you look at the Alberta Opportunity Stream alone, we're over 37,000, almost 38,000 people have submitted an expression of interest and indicated that the AOS might be something they want to apply through. But if you go down to the very bottom, after tallying up each of those programs, you can see that there's 58,000, what is that, 204 expressions of interest that are in the system as of, I think it's the end of May, isn't it? I can't remember, they last updated it. But you can see, guys, that this is just a product of everything that's happening. And when you have a massive demand for limited spots, they have to be, very careful. Now, you can see that there are programs where they are still issuing, notifications of interest to people in the pool. One of them is healthcare. And we know within these programs, there are priorities. And we've seen nurses still receive notifications of interest, and those areas that they see of most importance, they're going to get the limited spots. And the rest, it's a war of attrition, you guys. Effectively, anyone who's able to stay longer on their work permit and outlast the rest, who IRCC and the Liberal government are pushing with all their might to shove you out, those who are able to stay and have greater staying power are going to be the ones that are going to be able to ultimately transition to permanent residence. So amor, and I think that's probably translates to love, amore. It's hard. Any chance of getting invited under AOS as an admin assistant, it's a very, very, very low likelihood of that happening as it stands right now. Yeah.
All right. On this note, we'll move on to the next question. Sorry.
We'll try not to be so depressing, you guys. We'll try not to be so depressing.
All right. So this one is from Wendy, and this is a very important one. So I've applied for the postgrad work permit and my child is on the visitor record status. If we travel outside Canada for summer, is his visitor record still valid after we return to Canada? Can he continue studying? We have valid ETAs.
Brilliant question, Wendy. I would be ringing my bell, ding, or applause. Actually, is probably what we've got, some applause. That's what I would be doing, because this is a great question and many people don't understand it. Why IRCC has taken this policy position with people on visitor status or visitor records, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But the reality is, the moment you leave with your child that's on a visitor record, then that basically the visitor record has come to an end. And when you re-enter, it's a brand new entry. And whatever time the officer gives, that is the time that your child will then have. And so that is part of the reason, Wendy, why we always now apply for study permits for accompanying dependent children. Because if your child has a study permit and you leave and then re-enter, that study permit, that duration of the study permit is still the duration of time that your child will have. So effectively, what we've seen in the past is sometimes families don't realize that. They'll leave with their children who are on visitor records, then they'll come back in, even when the visitor record has an expiry date of 2 years in advance or a year and a half in advance. And then the time comes, and then you apply to extend you've got an LMIA now, and you're applying to extend your work permit on the LMIA. You include all your dependents and apply for new visitor record extensions for them. And then lo and behold, immigration comes back and says, wait a minute, your child, remember when you left, you traveled outside of Canada in the summer of 2025? Well, that officer just let that child back in. And if there was no restrictions, that child was only admitted for 6 months. So that child status expired in maybe December of 2025. And now it's been 8 months since that child status expired. So we can't extend. In fact, you can't restore your status because you're beyond 90 days. And then it becomes a real mess where you'd need to book a consult and we'd try to sort it out. But yeah, hopefully you're well aware when you come back in, you try to ask the officer, hey, I know when I come back in, my child is is not going to have their visitor record is not going to allow them to stay for the full duration. Will you issue a new visitor record for me? You can try, but more than likely when you come in, you have to then refile again, which once again is a waste of government resources. It's a stupid policy. But when you come in, then you'd have to apply to extend and to the full, basically to the same expiry date once again as the previous visitor record. So
yeah, Mark, I wanted to also give a shout out to this viewer. And Veronica, good morning to you. Veronica is one of the clients that I used to work with. And you, Mark, know the details of the matter
yeah,
when we had to go to the ID.
yep.
Veronica, I hope everything is going really well for you.
Yeah,
We all know about your case, and we keep our fingers crossed that your application is going to be approved soon.
you bet.
All right. Zeus says, hello, Igor and Mark. And Zeus also extends the greetings to Alicia as well. And
Yep.
Alicia right now, Mark, we didn't share why Alicia is gone.
Yeah,
Or
she's
actually,
on.
we did. I think we did, right?
I think at the beginning we talked briefly that she was away, but her and her family are on a road trip. They're driving out to Victoria for the conference, and
Yeah.
so she was taking some much needed break, and we'll be excited to have her back next week. But for the time being, her and her family are enjoying a much deserved little break together as they drive out to
And
the west.
Alicia is our spy into the Canadian Bar Association Immigration Conference,
Yes.
learning all the nuances and all the insights from IRCC, from CBSA, from other governmental agencies, and from other colleagues of ours.
Yeah, we're excited to see what she learns. I was all scheduled to go. I had flights booked, hotels, conference registration, everything. But I have a dear mother who had some surgery just literally this past week, and unfortunately, she just needed a little bit more care because she's coming home. And well, I was the guy to do it, so I had to cancel. But I am looking forward, Igor, to heading out to Toronto in the fall. I think you're going to head there
Yeah.
too to the Canadian Immigration Lawyer, the CELA conference. And so I'll be speaking on various matters with express entry. So that'll be fun. It'll be
And
good.
Mark, I was talking with Alicia about it on one of the previous live streams, that it would be a good idea if we have an in-person meeting with our viewers in Toronto, because we have
Yeah.
so many of them.
Yeah, that would be kind of fun to have kind of a little gathering. Hey, I hadn't
Mhm.
even thought of that. We could totally do that. We do have a
Yeah.
lot in Toronto. Hmm.
Mhm. All right, so the next one is from Arinze. So Arinze says, honestly, I'm yet to understand the essence of the pre-arrival letter.
Yeah. Well, okay. So the most important thing to understand, Arinze, is that Canada, unlike many other countries, actually care about how well you settle. So they want you to be successful. When they're saying, hey, come immigrate to Canada, in the past, people may not have had any contact with Canada. It may be their first entry. Now, the world has shifted a lot in the last few years, but they haven't stopped doing these pre arrival letters just because people are in Canada. Before, they would immigrate from outside of Canada and may not know anything about Canada. And so the government actually paid organizations to provide services and support to people newly arriving, newly settling in Canada. So the pre arrival letter is kind of a way to initiate that process to help you start preparing, because you can't just all of a sudden pick up and move to Canada and not know anything about where you're going or have some kind of plan in place. So that's what the pre arrival letters are for. Now, the reality is, right now, most people are already in Canada, so you don't need a pre arrival letter because you're already settled. You understand how the banking system works, you know, how to get your social insurance number, all those kinds of things. You've already done it. But that's why we have the pre arrival letter.
Mm-hmm. All right, so the next one is from Nicole. We've pulled her comment before. So Nicole says, thanks, Mark's spouse got spousal open work permit today. Congratulations. After an end of an exclusion order, we came for consult a year ago, waiting for permanent residence, 3x per century, and rural renewal, Alberta.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
understand
Messy
Nicole was one
situation.
of your past clients.
Yeah. Great to connect, Nicole. I'm glad that things, at least at this stage, worked out. And yeah, actually, I was going to go to Coaldale today and play a little pickleball. But the work schedule was a little bit busier now that Alicia stepped out, so I had to cancel. But every other week, we go out and play in those fun little pickleball courts out there in Coaldale. I like them, Igor, because they're all surrounded by trees. They've got good coverage. Now the wind still finds a way to get through a little bit because it's a little windy down here. But it's a nice courts down there in Coaldale. Oh, and I did all of my student teaching in Coaldale too. And it was this close, Igor, this close for Mark to not be an immigration lawyer, but to be a high school phys ed teacher at Kate Andrews High School in Coaldale. But in the end, they gave the job to another girl, good friend, excellent teacher. So it wasn't a bad choice. But when they gave her the position, that was my cue to go to law school. So that's how
Yeah.
life, the paths you take sometimes. Mm-hmm.
All right. The next one is from Norman from Vancouver. So Norman just finished his master's degree and applied for the postgrad work permit. The question is, do we help assess profiles and give permanent residence pathway advice at this stage, or only for ongoing PR applications?
All right, Igor, you tackle that one.
Yeah. Norman, we do everything except of refugee applications. I think that's the only category of immigration applications that we don't help with.
Yeah.
And in all situations, it's always good that you get a continuous help throughout your immigration process, not only when you are ready to submit your application, but even before, so that we understand, okay, are you eligible? What do you need to do to increase your chances? What are the potential concerns that you have to be aware of? What documents just need to start collecting upfront? If, let's say, you receive an ITA, you only have 60 days. And some documents take a lot longer to get than 60 days. So absolutely, we assess profiles. We make sure that whatever information you provide in your profile is also accurate. Because if you put something that would not be accurate, the officer may come back and say, when you submitted a profile, you put a check mark saying that all information is true and correct,
Yeah.
well, you've misrepresented, and we don't want you to get into that situation. So, absolutely. If you have any questions, you want to go to our website, or if you need any help, right? And
Mhm.
our website is holthelaw.com. You can click Speak to a Lawyer and then choose a lawyer from our firm with whom you would want to have a consultation. We have two durations for the consults, 25-minute consults and 50-minute consults. So you have the flexibility to choose whatever you need.
Yeah. And one thing I want to point out to Noman here is that I prefer you contacting us at the profile stage,
Mhm.
where we can give good, solid strategic advice, where we can make sure that things are done properly up front, because it's a lot more difficult to fix things after you've received an ITA when you haven't entered things in properly for your permanent residence. And in some cases, people don't realize that they may have, they may be missing points that they could have claimed if they'd done things differently or presented things differently. And there was an invitation to apply that came past that they could have been drawn under, but weren't, because they made a mistake in how they set up their profile. And so, yeah, we love getting connected with our clients at the earliest possible period. It just allows us to be and provide the best kind of advice.
Mhm. All right. So the next one is a super chat from Marco. And Mark, I'll let you answer this question.
Marco.
Does the
Hey, Mark.
AI?
Yeah, AI initiatives at your firm. That's a great question. So I actually just met with, she's actually a past client and current client, and just a brilliant, brilliant lady. And we were just talking about AI implementation within the firm. There was a time last year, a year ago, when, I said, we need to build our own thing. And so I spent way, way too much money building out just the framework for what this AI was going to do. And the reality is, AI is evolving so fast that for us to build our own kind of custom product just didn't make sense. And so this past client said, look, Mark, you are not a product developer. Like, stop. This is not your skill set. There are tons of tools and resources and off the shelf products. And let's face it, like whether it's Chat GPT, whether it's Claude, Gemini, whatever it is, Grok, there are so many things out there. It's all about implementation of what's off the shelf. You get something off the shelf, you embed it in your firm. We use custom GPTs all the time. I've got a whole army of custom GPT consultants and supporters and co-CEOs that help with the decision making in the firm, help us with our marketing. Everyone tries to utilize it as much as possible. But here's the caveat. Okay, when it comes to AI, like I use AI, even I'm constantly testing it to see how smart it is. And it still has a long way to come. You can't just use AI and say, okay, which program do I qualify for? It doesn't work. It doesn't have that level of specificity and experience. I have no doubt that one day it's probably going to get there, where the general intelligence is just going to be as smart as Igor, right? But the reality is, right now, when you try to find your right knock code, even, or you get it to try to help you, and I see this all the time, write your response to your procedural fairness letter or whatever. It has significant limitations. So it's great for cleaning things up. It's great for ideation, like getting ideas. But at the end of the day, it still requires a lot of elbow grease. In other words, you have to do your work, and you can't just pass it off on AI to figure out your response to a procedural fairness letter or to draft a letter of explanation. You have to know what you're putting in there. You have to understand the law yourself. And then AI can help to refine and kind of just hone your arguments and help to make them maybe a little more persuasive. But wow, yeah, our role, Igor and my role, is not replaced yet. That's for sure, because I've seen a lot of people, and it does still hallucinate. So no matter how much, how tight parameters you put around it, it can still kind of create things that don't exist. So you have to be careful with that. But it is going, I think, if I was to compare our firm to the vast majority of immigration law firms, or even just regular law firms, I think we're probably in the 99th percentile with what we're doing. And we're just a small little firm, but we've got a big heart. And with AI, we have a massive reach now, and we're helping more people now than I ever would have dreamed possible, because of the utilization of systems and processes, and where possible, AI. So super grateful for it. And there you go, Marco.
Perfect. And Mark, don't relax because you have another question.
Oh, tell us. Yes, absolutely, my friend. It's fly fishing season. Cameron Creek is open. I am so stoked. And that's where I'm headed, to Waterton National Park, and maybe even this Saturday. We'll see. Although my wife does have kind of this garage cleanup on my list, and it's kind of a mess. So I might have to clean the garage on Saturday versus go fly fishing, but it's definitely on the list. So my friend, yes, you reach out, and that's a date. That is a date. I'll bring my and for those who are not able to make it all the way out here to Alberta, I will absolutely post some fly fishing videos and give you some little tutorials, and maybe we'll toss them on this channel. I have another out of office channel that I'm just kind of building, and but it's a lot of work, and I'm too busy trying to help you guys now than to create some other YouTube channel. But maybe I'll post another one on the Canadian Immigration Institute. But if you do want to see some of my past little fishing stuff, just to see what Mark likes to do in his pastime, there are a couple videos that I have posted here on the Canadian Immigration Institute YouTube channel. You can just search up, like, I don't know, Mark's Adventures or something, or just search fishing, or anyways, and you'll see. So
yeah. And just a reminder for everyone who's watching, please share your questions. I see that we have over 200 people watching live, and we have only 49 questions so far. So highly encourage that you post your questions. There are some questions that deal with OINP and the number of spots left for each province. Those are the questions that we don't have an insight about, like how many spots they have left. And even if we have, that information would only be based on what we can find on our official website. But there are some questions that would be more generic in nature and would be helpful to people, so we'll prioritize that. So I have this question mark from Eliza, and so she says, good morning. What are the chances for an approval of the work permit with an LMA with 2 prior refusals? So one refusal was work permit extension, just with a contract, and a visitor visa refusal from Mexico without justifying ties to the country and reasons to go back.
Yeah, Elisa, it's difficult to answer that. It really is. Officers can't just refuse an application because they don't like you. All right. If you are including everything that you are supposed to include within that application, then you have a really good chance of success. But some of the things that can often trip up LMIA actually based work permits is your own qualifications. Like, do you have the work experience that would reasonably be expected to fill this position that's being offered to you? If you've had previous refusals and you are outside of Canada, those prior refusals can go to the heart of the bona fides of your application. They can say, well, you've had, previous refusals for these reasons, and I'm not satisfied that anything has changed within your life to suggest that if we grant this work permit, that you will actually go back home. And on top of all of this, layered right up at the top, is this current push by immigration to get people out of the country. And so they want to reduce numbers. And an easy way to keep the numbers low is pushing the current people out and not letting new people in. And so all of those are factors. And Elise, I recommend that you connect. And if there are any other, issues, I could give you a little better idea if we had more facts on your situation.
And maybe, Mark, here we can also mention that just before this live stream, we've recorded an episode on the Procedural Fairness Letter.
We did. Yes.
So even if the chances are very high and everything is legitimate, one tiny mistake that you've committed or omitted in your previous applications may trip the whole thing for you. And so by just knowing that, you have good shot at this application, it doesn't guarantee that the officer will not find something contradictory with your previous applications, and then will catch you by that, and issue the procedural fairness letter and refuse on misrep. So there are a lot of moving parts, and for sure, if you need any assistance, again, we would direct you to our website.
You bet. And we'll point out, like we just released episode 168. It's our Express Entry Getting It Right series. And that was on language tests, which normally you'd say, what's the big deal? But Alicia and I covered a ton of information on those language tests. And if you're in the process of applying for Express Entry, absolutely you need to follow the Getting It Right series. But the one Igor and I recorded just before this live stream was our Time's Up series. And it started, I think, last October. When we saw the writing on the wall, we saw that the Liberals were going to massively call out people and basically force them to leave. All of the, somewhat unsavory folks out there trying to exploit and take advantage of you were posting, online and all over all these strategies and trying to get you to pay them to do these strategies. So we've always been, we've taken our responsibility as immigration lawyers seriously, and we have a large platform here that allows us to help as many people as possible. And so we created the Time's Up series just to educate you with real information that you could use when you're deciding to hire a consultant or a lawyer, or there's someone out there who's telling you to go down a certain path when time was running out. We wanted to educate you so that you'd have the right information to make good decisions, including episodes on, why you don't want to fall out of status, or applying for an H&C application, or when not to apply for asylum, those kinds of things, in addition to others. So definitely go back. And if you haven't had a chance to watch those, please go back. And then was it 100? I can't remember when we started, how far back the Time's Up series started. But anyways, you definitely go back and check those out.
Yeah, and you can find our podcast by going to our website, login resources, and you can listen it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. So next one is a super chat, and perhaps I will ring the bell right away. Mm-hmm. Because this technician technologist designation from ASET, does it count as a regulated occupation under the AAP TAC pathway for the expression of interest points? This would be a little too specific situation that would make it impossible for us to provide you a definite answer. Though we have experience working with different situations, sometimes we just need to do a little more research. And the beauty of our consultations is that before we connect for a call, you will receive an immigration intake form, and you will be able to provide us with all information about your background and provide supporting documents that you would want to perhaps discuss during the consult. We are unable to review your whole application, but we can talk about specific details about some of your documents. And this is one of the questions that we would absolutely take for consults, and we would take some time to prepare for the call so that when we connect, we dive right straight to the topic and give you the answer that you're seeking. All right, so Alex is saying hello from Toronto. So
greetings, Alex. Maybe you'll be one of those ones that will attend our little event in person.
Yeah, and so Alex was saying, my intuition was right from 2019, and Alex is learning French since then.
Yeah.
Great decision, Alex.
Golden age of Francophone immigration in our country, and it is not ending anytime soon.
Yeah. All right. Harris says, hello, my CRS is 488 under the healthcare stream, but I'm outside Canada. Lately, most of the Express Entry in OINP draws seem to target in-Canada candidates. I'm feeling worried. Do we have any insights on Harris's chances?
Well, Harris, if you're within the healthcare stream, depending upon your NOC code, if you're in one of the category-based streams like healthcare, it doesn't matter whether you're FSW or CEC. You still have the ability to be drawn under that category. So when they do a Canadian Experience class application, those are open to anyone. But if it's a healthcare stream, then like I think May 2nd, I think was the last one, they did just a very small one. And when they did excuse me, a small one of only 500 invitations, that's why the score was still high at 510. But if you look at the past, when they did larger ones, like in November of last year, 3,000 invitations were issued, and it pulled the scores down to 463, which is doable range for people such as yourself. So yeah, those category-based draws are not restricted to CEC only, but they're open for whichever program you're eligible to get into the pool, FSW or otherwise.
All right. Similar question was from Aurora. So Aurora has 490 CRS points, and Aurora's wondering, would it make sense for her to try the rural community immigration pilot?
Yeah, this is an easy one, really easy. Guys, pursue every single program that even remotely is a possibility for you. There is so much uncertainty right now. And when you see these high numbers of applicants in the expressions of interest stream, understand that those individuals, many of them may not even be eligible remotely, but they had enough information to fill in the expression of interest and now are crossing their fingers. But if you are in one of these communities, or you have a connection or a job offer, you're absolutely going to pursue it. There's nothing stopping you from having a profile and express entry, going through the RCIP, having a separate PNP application even that's in the queue. So pursue every option that's available, Aurora.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Next question is from Jimmy. So Jimmy says, do we still need to declare that we have a valid job offer in an express entry profile, even if it doesn't give us extra points?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not going to hurt, Jimmy. You're going to answer it truthfully. If you have an LMIA-based work permit and you're working in a skilled position, then include it, right? In some cases, people may have had a permanent LMIA issued, but then the rule change came in, we'll include it as well. Now, the job offers are still valid for federal skilled worker eligibility. It's just not the comprehensive ranking system that are giving points. So
yeah. All right. This one is a little concerning from Spidey.
SpiderMan. Oh
Survived
my
the hardest
goodness.
week.
What the heck? Survived the heart attack last week. Spidey's now saying hi from Sapporo, Japan, complying with the regulations by not overstaying in Canada, leaving before staying for more than 180 days. I would give you applause, SpiderMan, but that is really scary, my friend. I didn't know that that had happened to you. Our thoughts and prayers go with you. That is not something to take lightly, and it's been really stressful for so many people. And I think that's what is missing in this big kind of impersonal, heartless approach to how the liberals are looking at all of you. These are real people, real families, and I just wish that, yeah, I wish just so much better for you guys, and that's why within the firm, like, we will fight for you. That's kind of our mission, is to give you every opportunity you have to realize your dream of staying. Now, with that being said, we are also very honest. We don't believe in going down paths that have remote chances of success, where you deplete all of your savings in a path that has virtually no chance. We don't do that. We advise you, we give you facts, we give you information, and then allow you to make good choices. But when we're retained, just like I described with the procedural fairness letter I was helping the client with last Friday, like, I was not feeling well in the afternoon. In fact, I was really quite sick. I had a little bit of heat stroke in the morning. I was out too long in the sun, and I had this monster headache and nausea, and I had to cancel all my appointments in the afternoon. But this one client had to get the procedural fairness letter submitted that day. And so I sucked it up, and we sat down and we worked, and it took a little bit longer because my brain was, wasn't operating at peak performance, but it took a while to kind of warm up. But then we kind of hit our groove, and it took like 5 hours to do it. But I'm really, really hoping that the client is going to have a positive result. We worked hard, and that's what we do. When you retain us, you retain Alicia, Igor, myself directly. We don't use assistants. We don't use paralegals or consultants or any other in between advisors. Prem, our intake specialist, helps us to set things up for you, but you work directly with us. And when you retain us, you are like family to us, and we will do everything we can to help you. So that's the pitch.
And you can go to our website and just check the reviews.
Yeah.
With some clients, we meet in person after
Yeah.
we submit their application. After they become permanent residents, we meet for coffee. I'm Mark's past client, and now
Yeah.
we are like a family. Uh, all right. So the next one is from Zeus. So endorsement letter for rural renewal pathway, I understand. I work for 2 employers, and one of them is willing to help apply for an endorsement letter from the mayor. Would this affect my other job?
Well, the key here, Zeus, is that your job offer is typically a full-time job offer.
Mm-hmm.
So, the client that I'm working with right now, so actually after this is over at noon, I'm going to help to finalize a PFL for another client. He works hard. In fact, it's not uncommon for him to work consistently at least 80 hours a week, like 2 full-time jobs. And that's kind of the issue. Immigration says, what's going on here? How can you say you're working 40 hours a week for this company and 44 for the other? Well, this guy has just a massive work ethic, and he's prepared to do whatever it takes. And so you just need to be able to explain, but on the surface, there's nothing that affects your other job. I'm presuming, Zeus, that you're on a post-grad or otherwise an open work permit. And if one employer is willing to submit, then you just have to make sure that you're going to be working full-time for that employer. In the end, the community is driving the ship, right? And so if the mayor is running the program and issuing those community support letters, then you just move forward and make sure that everything is disclosed.
Yeah. Next one is from Jay. Can I get a study permit along with the co-op work permit, or have to apply for the co-op after getting the study permit?
We usually apply together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we usually submit those applications together, Jay, if you know it's going to be a part of your study permit.
Yeah.
Because often what happens is processing times of 233 days. Sometimes if you don't do it in advance, then you complete your semester or whatever it is, and then you're ready to do your co-op, and then you don't have the work permit, and then you can't work full time, right? Because it's still during school. So you need that co-op work permit.
Yeah. All right. Next one is from Actually Singh. Does implied status count towards citizenship application physical presence?
Yeah, it's status.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. This one is interesting, and perhaps we can focus on this a little bit more. Is the new policy to exempt foreign nationals in Canada from certain requirements when changing employment,
Yeah.
is it already applicable? I'm on a closed work permit in Quebec, and I want to know.
Yeah. So understand, Isaac, this is something, there's more confusion about this than any other. I may be wrong. I don't think I'm wrong. I've looked at this quite carefully, but people are thinking that they can just, if they're on an LMIA with one employer or an employer specific work permit, that they can just, if they have a job offer from another, just slide over and start working for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not the case. The employer needs to have an LMIA in place, or under the International Mobility Program, have the offer of employment registered and have that A number to be included with your application. In those circumstances, you then do have the ability to notify IRCC and get authorizations to start work for that new employer before the actual work permit change of conditions, the new work permit, is obtained when you file inland. And so many people just assume that, and when they're reading it, they're like, I've got the job offer, it's good to go. I just need to, once I get the job offer, I can just slide over and I don't need to wait. But that is not the case. So
yeah. And you can see even here, when you submit a web form requesting the authorization, you have a statement. I have submitted my application for a work permit online. And you need to provide the application number. And before you can submit a work permit application online, you have to have that either a number with the LMA exempt offer of employment or the LMA number.
Yeah.
So be very careful with the exact code and the exact statement that you need to provide.
Yeah. Yeah.
All
And
right.
this policy is one that was originally created during COVID times, but when you've got 233 days processing and you're changing employers, there's an invested interest that the government has in people who have valid, labor tested jobs, where they can show that there's no Canadian or permanent resident available to do it, or it fits under the IMP. Otherwise, in an employer specific way, they don't want them to sit and not do anything. So it makes sense. I understand the policy, but people have to be careful. Yeah.
All right. So next one is super chat from Jay, and I think Jay has also sent a couple of questions. So how do you see draws in CEC going forward? How much is the quota for CEC left for the year? Is 510 good, or shall I start French? Any idea on MP&P?
Yeah. Okay. How do you see the draws in CEC ahead? Well, we know when we look at the levels plans that there are actually a few more straight up express entry spots in 2025 compared to 2024. Why? Because they stripped them away from the PNPs and pulled them back to the federal economic programs. So, although things have shifted to an in Canada or the kind of the category based focus, overall there are more overall spots. So how much is the quota for CEC left for the year? Don't know. I don't know what that is. Is 510 good, or shall I start French? 510 is not bad, but still start French, because even a couple points, if you learn French, even at lower levels, and you can speak or you can listen, maybe you can't read or write as well, but if you can score 1 or 2 points per ability, that could be the difference that pushes you over the edge to be able to get your ITA. So if there's something on the table, pursue it. And I know it's a lot of work. We know that. Igor and I, we talked to a lot of people. This is one of the messages we gave to the Ukrainian community. And, it's hard. You're trying to learn English, but then they say learn French, and that can be an issue. But if English is solid for you and you're maximizing your English points, then absolutely it doesn't hurt to pursue studying French.
Mm-hmm. And Mark, I want to also pull a couple of questions from Jay as well. So Jay says, I want to go with you for filing my study permit with co-op work permit. It's for the Western School of Business for CPA. The question is, do I still need to book a consult, or can I work directly with you by handing over the file?
Yeah. We always start with a consult, because I can't tell you how many times I've had situations where a client says, look, I want to hire you to help me with my express entry application. And then I sit down with them after they've sent the legal service agreement and they paid the $5,000 fee that we charge, and the 5% GST. And I sit down with them in a post onboarding call, and I realize you actually are not eligible. You don't have the work experience you think you have, or you're not going to be able to prove it. And I don't believe in taking people's money unless they actually qualify. And so then I end up having to return the funds, and then there's a lot of wasted time. So consults are always the essential first step when you're retaining our firm. And in that consultation, you'll get tremendous value from it, where we have a chance to not only assess whether we're a good fit, but I can give you a very good strategy on what the future holds, the options that are available. We have DIY courses that we offer, and sometimes people choose to purchase one of those, like our Express Entry Accelerator. That is kind of the flagship kind of sponsor, if you will, of these live Q&As. Igor has an amazing visitor visa course as well that you can find on our Canadian Immigration Institute website. And we'd encourage you to check those out. But yeah, we always start with a consult, because then it gives us a chance to figure out what the best program is, because different, depending which path you go, we have different fees for those programs, largely because of the level of work that's involved with one versus another, and we can sort all of that out.
Yeah. All right. As the time comes to an end, I will pull several questions that are pretty the same in nature.
Okay.
So again, that's the question from Jay. Is Francophone ending in 2025?
I don't know.
The next one is from Poonam. Will demand of French will be like this in the future? Perhaps we do know it will.
Yeah. We know that French will continue to be in demand, because Prime Minister Carney has specifically put that into his election platform, indicating that they not only intended to maintain the rate of French that they're outside of the province of Quebec, that they're pushing, but to actually increase it even more than what was in the levels plans. So is there ever going to be a time right now where French is just a waste of time? No, no. Anyone who's hoping is French is going to give you a step up if you can figure it out.
Yeah. And then Shirley was asking a similar question. Do you think they will announce the extension
I
of the
think so. I
mobility?
think so, surely. Like, I don't know for certain. It's kind of tricky because how far are they going to push this? They're trying to get people out. You can see the new this new act that's coming in, the strengthening borders, with all of those things. But the immigration elements to it are very, very harsh. And ultimately, do they want to cancel the extension of the mobilité francophone? I don't think it's going to get canceled. They could go back to maybe a higher standard of French, saying no, not 5, but now you need to have a level 7 in order to get a work permit, or that only skilled work permits, tier 3 or higher, are going to be eligible for the program. They could make those changes, but I don't think they're going to outright cancel it.
Mm-hmm.
At least not anytime soon.
Yeah. And then this one is from Cretanand. Any ideas about the cutoff for the next French category draw? So, unfortunately, guys, I don't have the crystal ball
Wish we had
overlay.
a crystal ball, because I would just like go and look deeply into the crystal ball, but deeply.
But Merck, instead of a crystal ball, we have
Yeah.
the score, right? Like,
And you look at the invitations issued, right? Like there's a whack that have been issued. Even for 2025, you can see 7,500, 45, 65, I think is what it is. So there's a lot that are being issued. And, I think they're well on their way with their targets. But, that's what you get when you issue 7,500 invitations to people that really their only skill set is they speak French fluently. That's how you get a 379 CRS pass mark.
mhm.
So, yeah.
All right. And then we're going into a blitz,
All right, let's
trying
blitz
to
it.
answer as
Blitz
many
this.
questions as we can
Here we
before we
go.
wrap up.
I got this.
Okay. So the question is from the Zeus. Do you know when the trade category draw will happen, or possibly of
Yeah.
when or
When
whether it will probably?
yeah, yeah,
So trade.
when it will. Yeah. So if you look at the trade, we had that we're still waiting on one this year. So I'll say next month.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing. We're
Okay.
overdue for a trade draw. Maybe next month. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The next one is from Amit. Will the French targets be met for this year? Can we expect more CC draws in 2025?
Well, I think for sure there's going to be more CEC draws. That's without a question. As far as the French targets being met for this year, remember there is a range, right? There's a range, a low range, and a high range, as well as kind of the target. And with the prime minister saying that they intended to increase the percent even more, there's still capacity for more French draws.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to pull as many as I can. Okay,
Yeah.
this one is from Joy. Thank you for all you do. When do you think the new regulations of not accepting new applications will come in effect?
I think it's going to happen fast. Now things do slow down a little bit in the summer,
Mm-hmm.
but I think they put these proposals out, and the reality is they already know what they're going to do. When
Mm-hmm.
they release these proposals, very rarely do they change a bloody thing. So, as the Canadian Bar Association and the Canadian Immigration Lawyer Association, like we provide submissions on these regulations, and we will be putting together and submitting them, as is the case for most organizations that are affected by them. But very rarely do we see actually any changes to it. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Mm-hmm. Nothing is asking, does violating a condition on my study permit automatically makes me subject to a
No,
removal?
it doesn't. No, it doesn't automatically make you. There's discretion on the part of officers. And that's why if you're in this situation and you're applying for, say, a work permit or whatever, a post grad, just like we taught people in episode 169 of our podcast that will be released here shortly, it's so important to be proactive when you know you've got issues. Don't hide or conceal or try to hope they don't discover it. I own it. I lay it out there. I tell the officer, I take full responsibility. I explain the extenuating circumstances, and then I ask for mercy, essentially. If there are legal, foundations that I can use as kind of defensive mechanisms to say, hey, in other situations, I wasn't as serious as this person, and they were found to have not done something bad, but everything is case by case, but nothing. It's definitely not a slam dunk that just, because of A, B will result. So because you violated a condition on your study permit doesn't automatically make you subject to a removal order from Canada.
Okay, Mark, can I have an alert?
Okay, what do we got?
The
Get around
alert. Let me just.
trades.
Nope,
P&P.
nope, no, not a trade draw.
Let's see.
Ta-da! Healthcare.
Healthcare. Oh, right on. See, once again, a tiny one. So 500. So still hanging at 504. So that one viewer just below. So close. Hang in there.
Mhm.
So these category-based draws, and just to clarify, the category-based draws pull from both FSW and CEC candidates. So technically, people could be from outside of Canada, a foreign physician applying to immigrate to Canada, and could technically, go through here. However, to hit 500 points, it's pretty hard to do that if you're outside of Canada, unless you speak
Mhm.
Lithuanian. No, I'm just joking. French.
All
Yes.
right. And then we have 2 minutes left,
Okay.
and that's just enough for us to go through a couple of more questions.
Okay.
So this one is from Aurora. For the TRV applicants, thus mentioning the details of an active export entry profile that is only in the export entry pool of candidates helps in favor for the offshore applicants. Does it get weighed on the basis of showcasing dual intent or stay in future? Essentially, should you
Yeah.
mention that you have an active profile? Does it give you
Yeah.
any advantage?
So whenever you're outside of the country and you're applying for any kind of a temporary entry, a visitor visa, whatever, an express entry profile is not helpful. It's not. Yes, Canada has this concept of dual intent. You can intend to become a permanent resident one day while also at the same time maintaining an intention to comply with whatever the temporary conditions of your stay are. But when you're applying for visitor visa, some countries, they will look and say, well, do you really want to just visit? It all comes down to what you put in that TRV application and the justification for your trip and all of your ties to your home country. But having a profile in the pool does show an indication that you do want to become a permanent resident of Canada at some point in the future. And so it's always a little bit more on the negative side, but it doesn't mean that just because you have a profile, therefore your TRV is going to get refused. So
Mhm.
it's a little bit of a dance, but if if you're applying for a temporary resident visa and you're thinking, hey, should I put this express entry profile in right now or not? I wouldn't. I would not submit it. But
Yeah.
once you've had one in there, it's a part of your record. So withdrawing it before you file for your TRV isn't necessarily going to cure any, dual kind of intention issues an officer would look at.
Yeah, and in the application form, it asks, "Have you ever applied for immigration to Canada in the past?" And typically, the profile would not go into there. Only the EAPR and previous applications that actually have been submitted.
Yeah.
All right, the last three questions that we have piled up, two of them are pretty similar. Is there any
Yeah.
way to get a work permit on arguing H&C considerations? And
Mhm.
then my work permit will expire in October. I have a Canadian child. Can I apply for the H&C
Yeah.
program? And before Mark, we give an answer.
Yeah. Yeah. So both of you really need to book consults with us. However, if you go back and look at our Time's Up series, both of those topics are discussed because we literally anticipated every kind of pathway that all of these, representatives out there were peddling. And we talked about those. One of those in the context of our the previous question, I don't know if you can jump back to that one about a work permit that's on H&C. Um, Temporary resident permits are kind of like an H&C for a temporary application. So in some circumstances, if justifiable and you can prove it, you can apply for a temporary resident permit, a TRP, plus an open work permit to allow you to stay in Canada and continue working because of, among other issues, humanitarian and compassionate factors. So that's in the context of, H&C considerations on a work permit. We also know that there is still the the worker, the abused worker kind of work permit that's available if, if your workplace has been exploiting you or, not treating you very well. That's a possibility as well. But the fact that you apply for an H&C application doesn't just give you a right to apply for a work permit. You have to reach the approval in principle stage where they accept that your H&C claim is valid, subject to the background and security screening at the end, but where they accept it as being a valid H&C claim, until you reach that stage, there's no right to apply for a work permit based on the fact you've just submitted your H&C. So don't let anyone trick you into that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the last one would be from Riss Ever. Is it
Yep.
risky to apply for visitor record for the second time?
No, it's not. You just have to be able to show and justify why you want to stay in Canada longer and that you have funds to support yourself and that you're not working illegally.
Mm-hmm. All right. So on this note, let me change the screen to here. Again, we are unable to answer all of the questions just because of the time constraint and because we will really put our thought into answering the question. And sometimes we need to do a little more research. We need to know a little bit more about your situation. And it just doesn't make sense for us to pull up the question just saying, you know what, we don't know, book a consult. We don't want to make an impression that this live Q&A is just for you to lure you to book a consult. We're trying to help whenever we can and in whatever way we can. But sometimes it's just we're unable to do so unless we speak directly to you in private. So for those situations, we urge you to book a consultation on our website, holthelaw.com. If you require a little hand-holding and a little guidance as to how to submit your expert entry application, and you cannot afford legal fees or you cannot afford a consult or multiple consults, consider going to our Canadian Immigration Institute website. We have the expert entry course and the TRV course and the citizenship course coming soon. And then for everyone else who just want to observe and see us answering the questions that perhaps may be helpful to someone else as well, consider connecting with us next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. Hopefully Alicia will be back by then and our live Q&A will happen as usual.
Yeah. And I want to end with one last thing for those of you who are still sticking around to the very end. Just a little pre-notice. Holthe Immigration Law is expanding a little bit. And so we are in the process of looking for someone to assist us with this AI and with our implementation of a number of things within the firm, including our social strategy a little bit. So if you have skill sets in those regards, watch, because we will be posting some job descriptions and opportunities in that world. So stay tuned for that. All right. Thank you guys for connecting as always. It's been fun.